Silem stars, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, join the Silem stars by hitting the subscribe button down below. It's absolutely free and it helps the channel grow. In today's video, I'm going to teach you guys how to make a corset from start to finish. We're going to be creating our own breast cups in this video. I already drafted the pattern for this tutorial in my previous upload, so be sure to check out that video so you see how I drafted the pattern and how I cut it out. So in this video, I'm going to be taking you through the entire stitching process, very detailed and easy to understand. I have other corset tutorials as well, including one that I actually made a corset by using a ready-made breast cup. I also have Victorian corset tutorials as well as over-bust corset tutorials as well. So definitely check out my corset tutorials playlist. I'm going to leave the link to that playlist in the description box down below. So be sure to check it out. Without further ado, let's get right into the video.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
So these are the different pieces of the corset. I've gone ahead to cut out my lace. I'm using a lace fabric for this, so I use the pattern to cut the lace. I also cut the doll face satin. Now this is the lace fabric, like I said, and then I'm also going to be using a doll face satin fabric, which is what we have here. I also went ahead to stick a hairstay on the wrong side of the doll face satin fabric to give it structure. For the lining, I also use an interfacing. I use the paper stay on the wrong side to also give it structure as well. Now remember that when you're cutting all these pieces, make sure that you leave ½ inches around, okay? So ½ inches in addition to your actual pattern piece. Make sure you leave ½ inches all the way around, okay? Now for the center front piece, I did not fold my pattern paper when I was cutting it, but you have to remember that that edge there has to be cut on your fabric on fold, okay? However, if you had folded your pattern paper when you were drafting, all you have to do is just open it up and then cut it regularly, okay? Cut it like as usual, okay? But if you didn't fold it, all you have to do is just remember to cut it on fold. Now, these are the breast pads I'm going to be using. I've gone ahead to just cut the cups 1 and 2 on the breast pad, and this is how thick the breast pad is, so that's what you want to use. Now for my back pieces, I've also gone ahead to cut them on my lining and on my doll face satin as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place the lace on top of the doll face, and I'm going to sew it all the way around for all the pieces. Now if you're not using a lace fabric, if you're using like maybe a doll face satin, a velvet fabric, or any other fabric that is not transparent, you don't have to do this step. I'm doing this simply because I'm using a lace to sew my own corset. So this step is optional depending on whether or not you're using a lace fabric or whether or not you're using a transparent fabric. Now once I'm done, this is what we're going to have. Now I'm going to repeat this for all the pieces, including cups. Now once I'm done with that, I'm going to take my back pieces, the 2 back pieces, I'm going to place them right sides facing, and I'm going to go ahead and just sew them together with ½ inch seam allowance. I did that for the other back piece as well. This is what the back pieces look like once we've sewn them. Now moving on to our front pieces, I'm going to also place the side front. I'm going to place the side front on top of the center front, and I'm going to go ahead and just pin that. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side front as well. I'm going to sew along that line with ½ inch seam allowance as well. So I'm doing the same thing on the other side, placing the side front on top of the center front and then pinning that in place, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew that with ½ inch seam allowance. And once we've done that, this is what we have. Now for the cups, I'm going to place cup 1 and cup 2 right sides facing. I'm going to pin them together and sew it. Make sure that you don't make a mistake and sew cup 1 and cup 1 together or 2 and 2 together. Make sure you're sewing 1 and 2. Okay, so it's very important that you don't mix it up. That's why it's important that you label it. So I'm just going to sew them together with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once I open it up, this is what we have. Now for the cups, the breast pads, I'm going to join them together using a zigzag stitch. I'm not joining it with a straight stitch, a zigzag stitch. And as you can see, I didn't place them right sides facing, neither am I sewing them with any allowance. I'm just joining with a zigzag stitch. That way, there's no bulkiness and everything lays flat. Now taking my lining piece for the front piece, I'm just going to go ahead and just mark my style lines. Now these are the lines, or these are the lines where you're going to actually go ahead and sew your boning channels on. So just go ahead and just mark whatever it is you want, but make sure that the distance between one line and the other is the same with the others. Okay, so make sure that the distances between the lines are equal. And at this point, I had finished sewing my boning channels on the lining piece. For the back piece, I'm also going to go ahead and also draw my style lines as well. And I'm also going to go ahead and just sew the boning channels. For the boning channels, I used the bias tape to create it. So I just placed the bias on the wrong side and then I just sewed that down. And once I was done for the back pieces, this is what we have. Now, as you can see, I did this on my lining, but you can also go ahead and do this on your main fabric. For the cups, I had already joined them as I showed you earlier. Now for the fabric cups, I went ahead to just open the seam allowance and I ironed it flat. Now when I placed the fabric on top of the padded cups, you can see that the cups are way bigger. So I went ahead to just trim it, making sure that it's smaller than my main fabric cup by 1/2 inch all the way around. You can also make it smaller by 1/4 inch all the way around if you prefer. Now this is my main front piece. Now this is the cup. Make sure that you pay attention to number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is supposed to go and sit where you have the center front, okay? So as you can see, by the time I sew it, the 1 sits towards the center front, while number 2 sits towards the side front. So pay attention to that when you're deciding which cup goes where. It's so easy to make a mistake and then sew it the wrong way. So once you have that sorted, all you have to do is just place this midpoint of the cup to the midpoint of that bodice and then just sew from that midpoint to one side and from the midpoint to the other side. So once we're done, this is what it looks like. I'm also going to go ahead and do the same thing for the other one as well. For the lining piece, you want to go ahead and do the same thing. You want to go ahead and just fix in the cups the same way you fix them for the fabric. Now I'm just going to go ahead and just trim out any excess on the cups. If you don't have any excess, that's fine. If you do have any excess, just go ahead and just trim it so that it's equal with that center piece there. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to go ahead and just fold it so that the other side is, equal or symmetrical with the first, side that I had trimmed. And this is what the front piece looks like once we've joined the 2 cups together. I'm also going to go ahead and just trim out any excess. So as you can see, our cups are already standing beautifully, very firm, and they are well padded, as you can see. This is what the back looks like as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and just attach my yokes. So this is one side of the yoke. I'm just going to go ahead and decide where I want to place it. Once I was comfortable with the position where I placed it, I just bent it down like I just turned it or flipped it over. Guys, English is hard. I just flipped it over, and then I'm just going to go ahead and just pin it to the fabric, both sides. I made sure that the yoke was, starting at that midpoint of the cup. And then I'm just going to go ahead and just place my lining on top of it, right sides facing with the fabric. I'm also going to go ahead and just pin it. Just make sure to pin it all the way around so that it's easier for you to sew it. And I'm going to go ahead and sew it all the way with 1/2 inch seam allowance. For my back piece as well, I'm just going to go ahead and place my yoke. Then I'm going to go ahead and just flip it and place it right sides facing with my fabric. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sandwich this yoke with the lining. Now I'm going to go ahead and just pin it all the way so it's easier for me to sew it. So along that line as well. So once I'm done with that, this is what we have. I'm just going to go ahead and just open this up, and then I'm just going to go ahead and just create notches all along that allowance, that seam allowance. This would help it to relax when I iron it flat. But before I iron it, I'm just going to go ahead and flip it to the right side, making sure that the allowance is facing the lining side. I'm just going to go ahead and just stop stitch. Now same thing with the lining. I'm just going to open it up, create notches along the seam allowance, flip it closed, make sure the allowance is facing the lining side. Then I'm going to go ahead and just stop stitch that. Once I'm done stop stitching, I'm just going to go ahead and just push the yoke out of the way and then close, sew the sides closed. I'm also going to go ahead and also sew the sides closed for the front piece as well after top stitching. And once we're done, guys, this is what we have. It looks good already. And this is what the back piece looks like as well. Now before we go, I'm just going to go ahead and just insert my boning. I'm using a 1/2 inch wide plastic boning. You can use any boning of your choice, but this is the one I prefer. Now I'm just going to go ahead and just mark the length of that boning, and then I'm going to reduce that length by 1/2 inch. And I'm also going to go ahead and just round the edges of the boning so it's not too sharp or uncomfortable. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.